Thank you to everyone for staying on. My name is Toby Carling with the Bisnow team. I'd like to welcome you all to our next and final panel of the day, the importance of building wellness. From this point onwards, working in a building that promotes health and well-being, both personal and social, will be non-negotiable for the people that work in them. In the short term, workers need to be assured that the building is safe to come back to. In the longer term, they want to be assured that the building has in place the systems and management to ensure that it can help them stay fit and well in an increasingly fragmented world, and also have a positive impact on society and the environment. I want to remind everyone today again that there will be polls going on throughout the discussion on the right-hand side next to the chat feature. Please answer these, as it's the only opportunity to see the responses. After the discussion, there'll also be a chance to do some extra networking and spend time in the expo pages and the lobby section after the discussion. Before we start, I'd like to say a huge thank you to our partners for the session, IWBI and TP Bennett. Thank you so much to both of those for helping us with the content. Their input has been second to none. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce a fantastic panel today. Ronan Giorno, European Head of Operations at Heinz. Basil Demarutis, Managing Partner at Four Partnership. Michelle Wilkie, Director, TP Bennett. Anne-Marie Aguila, Senior VP, EMEA, International Wellbuilding Institute. And our moderator for today, Abigail Dean, Global Head of Sustainability at Naveen.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you very much for joining us. Well, as has just been said, with many office workers spending most of this year working from home, the question of what a return to normal might look like as hopes for the global rollout of a vaccine grow by the day is particularly relevant for offices, with many businesses starting to question exactly what form of office space and how much they're going to need in 2021. I think it's fair to say that the pandemic has certainly accelerated the focus on health and well-being in buildings that was already very much underway before this year. And I'm delighted that we have such a fantastic panel of experts to discuss this issue. So I'm going to start off today by going first to Michelle and asking her, Michelle, what do you think are the key things that people will want to know about a building that will make them feel more safe when we do start to return to the office on a permanent basis?
Thanks, Abigail, and good afternoon, everyone. I think to begin with, we really need to think about why we want to go back into the office and reconsider, how, when, and where we work. I think there's several factors of what we've been thinking about, and what do people miss the most? People miss the people. There's so many studies have been done, and we did an internal competition on what people miss the most about the office, and 94% is human interaction. So although, working from home has its benefits, obviously it doesn't have the office, what we're missing is the kind of the community spirit, the mentorship, and the vibrancy that the office has to offer. I think mental health and well-being obviously is on the forefront of everyone's mind right now. And I think we can't kind of look aside mental health and loneliness. And I think it's the responsibility of the workplace to actually ensure that there's kind of important kind of communication strategies to kind of make people feel safe and comfortable on the return to the office, but also to get people excited about coming back into the city again. I think if we can, ensure that businesses know, or staff know that, their employee is concerned about their health and well-being, then the pilgrimage back to the office, I think, will be a much kind of more exciting journey moving forward. I think we also need to consider, though, that the space is in between the office as well, and just to make sure that, that health and well-being is addressed at home, in the office, and the spaces in between. I think what COVID-19 has done is really kind of prompted this new kind of global flexible working pilot. Things are definitely not going to go back to how they were, and nor do we want them to. The office does need to evolve. And, what we think is it really needs to become a destination. It needs to kind of become a place, where people kind of can come to something and feel something bigger than what they feel when they're kind of connected to their Teams chat. I think there's big concerns at the moment on boundaries between kind of home and work life. I'm guilty of it as well, as if you're on calls all day long, 5 o'clock is not 5 o'clock anymore. And I think we can all agree that the traditional 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, COVID has completely turned this on its head. And maybe, that's one of the good things I think that has come out of COVID is that, this flexible working is definitely going to be a key component, I think, of future offices moving forward. I don't think the desk is dead. I think that, we still need a desk, but I think that the types of workspaces that are incorporated into the future office really needs to be considered. Obviously, we need to look at hygiene, we need to look at social distancing and all these things, but it's going to be a challenge when we come into the office on, if there's still, for example, in the lift, if you can't kind of encourage movement, if there's limitations on social distancing, how do we get people into the building safely and moving into the building as well and throughout? So, introducing things like staircases to incorporate, vertical and horizontal connection. We need to kind of review densities of, workplaces to make sure that we're not cramming people in. I think all in all, I think it's an exciting time, I think, to be in workplace design. And I think we almost need to use COVID as kind of a really kind of good opportunity kind of to shift our traditional working habits and thinking to something that's more progressive.
Great, thanks, Michelle. And I love that phrase, the desk is not dead. And building on that, Basil, are there any examples that you've come across in your work that you'd like to highlight of building on these specific measures that that we can act on to make sure that people feel safe when they do return to the office?
No, absolutely, and I think I violently agree with the points that Michelle made first and foremost. And I think for sure this crisis has taught us that buildings and health and the environment and our personal health are inexorably connected. I mean, I don't know why we would have ever thought that they weren't, but it has absolutely hammered that point home. I do think, though, that we need to get past the kind of immediacy of and these transient issues that we're facing around health, the immediate health crisis and hand sanitizers and Perspex glass, and talk about these, I think, much more enduring and interesting questions around what is the office for, and particularly as it relates to our personal health and well-being. And what influence does it have on that? This notion of the environment and our health being inextricably connected, and in doing so, we will move beyond, I hope, this question of, and the answer to the question really of that the response we had in the office world, which is that we'll try to make sure that the office doesn't kill you, and somehow we'll make it marginally less bad. I mean, I don't know any product, as a landlord and an investor in real estate, I don't know any product anywhere in any sector that sells itself by telling you that we'll do our best to try not to kill you. I mean, I'm not a marketing genius, but I certainly know that that's not a great strategy. So we need to advocate for the office and advocate for the kinds of things that the office will do to actually improve your health and well-being, and why that's a better alternative than staying at home, and why there are things in the office that you can do that you can't do at home. And whether that's, of course, the things that we've all started on doing, like healthy lifestyle options around cycling and fitness and things like that. I think there'll be a wave of exploration and discovery of all manner of things that I'm personally extremely excited about. I think this is a golden age for design, for architecture, and I'm going to be controversial and say it's a golden age. We're entering a golden age for the office, and I'm super excited to see what we're going to make of it.
Great, thanks, Basil. And building on that concept of advocating for the office and addressing how it can become something positive, Anne-Marie, I'll come to you next and ask you how health-focused standards such as WELL can support office owners of modern developments to keep tenants safe and deliver this more positive message.
Thanks, Abby, and you're absolutely right. I mean, never has the sort of relationship between health and the economy been more obvious. So back in July, the IWBI released a new program called the WELL Health Safety Rating, which is a product that really provides guidance on how we can reopen buildings. And it was really an evidence, we knew that it was going to be important to have an evidence-based approach. So we brought in our third-party reviewers that helped us look across all new and existing buildings and really helped identify the key operation policies, maintenance protocols, occupant engagement discussions, and even emergency preparedness plans that really was designed to empower the owners and the operators to take those steps to prioritize health and safety, not just for their staff and visitors, but also their investors and stakeholders. So we've been really excited. We've already, since the launch at the end of July, we've got over 400 million square feet of buildings around the world, including buildings like Yankee Stadium or the Empire State Building. We've been really excited to see Overbury here in London be our first candidate to receive their health safety rating. And it's just instilling a huge amount of confidence and trust in occupants and even just the stakeholders themselves so that they understand what they're doing. And just to give you a quick description, I won't go into a lot of detail, but it consists of a subset of features that focus on 6 really important themes. And those are exactly what you would imagine: cleaning and sanitization procedures, emergency preparedness programs, HR and health service resources, 2 key areas that we all need much visibility around, which is air and water quality management. And the last 2 areas are stakeholder engagement and communication. So how do you make the invisible visible? How do you actually communicate what's been done to the building in an effective way to provide that trust and confidence? And the last category is innovation, because we really want to hear from folks in the community who are doing things really innovatively in terms of building that sense of confidence and trust.
Great, thanks, Anne-Marie. And Rona, maybe to bring you in now as an owner and operator of buildings, reflecting on some of what Anne-Marie said about empowering owners and occupiers of buildings to take control of some of this. What are the actual behavioural changes that landlords and tenants can introduce to create that environment where a building is more healthy?
Sure. No, I think just to build on the the panelists' views, I think that a fundamental starting point has to be for landlords to begin to look at the people who use space as customers, as consumers of services, and really establish the right mechanism to listen and engage. So not just look at them as tenants who pay rent. And I think with that, really look at the model, the supply chain, and transform that to become much more customer-centric, with the mindset of providing a service to the humans who use that environment. And I think it's about a partnership between the occupiers of space, the operators and landlords, not only to look at the amenities and how healthy and efficient and well-run the building is, but also how they create that destination and ensure that the building is weaved and part of the local neighborhood, so that the sense of community is truly created. And with that, you are bringing local operators and local businesses to contribute to the social and business activities of that building. So I think the list, the menu is exhaustive, but I do think a starting point is looking at the human at the center and saying what we need to do, where are the gaps.
Yeah, absolutely. And Basil, maybe I can bring you back in here, thinking about the huge number of existing buildings that we have. And we heard from Ronan there about some of the measures that can be taken by the landlord to centre buildings in the community and to create that kind of that feeling. What about older buildings where you haven't necessarily built some of these some of the design features that we've heard about in from the get-go? What can we do with the huge number of existing and particularly those older or maybe even heritage buildings?
I think that's a great point, because of course we all know this fantastic statistic that by the time we're supposed to be net zero carbon as a society in 2050, that 80% of the buildings that will exist in 2050 already are built today. So we can't just look at shiny new tall grade A buildings and forget about the rest, because we're forgetting about the silent majority. I think there's tons that you could do. Obviously, you're somewhat more limited on some of the technical things like M&E systems, but oftentimes, for example, older buildings have openable windows. So how do you use those? It's a key criteria actually of the WELL standard and oftentimes it's a bit at odds with the environmental sustainability piece, but actually having fresh air, we've found out is kind of a good thing. So I think it's about working with the fabric of the building and not fighting it and doing what you can. But I believe strongly also that so much of what goes into making a building healthy, both physically healthy and mentally healthy, are soft things. So what are the programs that you could put in? What are the things that you could do to support your tenants and their mental health? How can you help them with their family needs and be that daycare or other things? So there's tons of things that you can do that, first of all, don't cost a lot of money and that don't require you smashing about a building and starting from scratch.
Great, thanks, Basil. And Michelle, I'd like to come back to you now. So thinking about those actual occupants of a building and the end users, and what they really want in terms of a healthy and well workspace, those who succeed in real estate will undoubtedly be those who can commit to investing not only in sustainable buildings, and we heard from Basil there about that focus on achieving net zero carbon by 2050 that we all know is so important, but also those that can provide services to end users that can aid in creating healthy environments, and that can transition from providing not just property, but also providing real estate services. What are the services that you think people really want and need in buildings?
I think it's a really good point. I think the future of workplace, is going to be very much an amenity-led focus. I think people are looking for what they can't get at home. It's as simple as things as, good coffee, obviously good spaces to meet with colleagues, kind of advanced technology. But I think also an interesting thing to consider is digital inclusivity, because we're still going to be always working, there's still going to be an element of working from home or working from somewhere else. And when we do migrate back to the office, how do we make sure someone is digitally inclusive that maybe is dialing in from a meeting or from somewhere else? We find it difficult perhaps when we're showing finishes, for example, around a table. How do we communicate these ideas? When there's a lot of tactile things, how do you communicate this digitally? I think in terms of other amenities within the office design itself, people always, plants and well-being obviously is not a new concept, but every single survey we do with kind of our clients, people want more planting, they want more natural finishes, they want garden spaces, they want allotments, they want, rooftop gardens, and to kind of go on to what Basil was talking about with, refurbishing existing buildings, there's so much unutilized roof space in London. Why aren't we kind of reinvigorating, the rooftops of London to kind of introduce kind of a lot more green spaces and connecting also, the ground floor space, the public use up into those rooftop elements. So I think there's some great opportunities to explore there. I think within the office environment, we need to ensure that we're designing for all types of people, neurodiversity, introverts, extroverts, making sure spaces are accessible for everyone. And it's beyond, putting ramps in. And I think we need to look at design more holistically moving forward and how spaces can be, designed to kind of suit all needs. We also need to consider that the open plan office environment, needs to evolve. We don't all like being in loud, noisy environments. I think with obviously the increase in Zoom calls and the like, we do need private space, private rooms, but also we just need spaces to switch off. We just need to kind of be able to kind of get away from the desk and, not feel guilty about sitting on a sofa for an hour and chilling out, because, we all need kind of things to help us refuel. And the office environment needs to provide those types of spaces if we want to encourage people to come back into London to use them.
Great. And I picked up on your, a lot of great different factors in that, but talking about digital connectivity and some of those kind of technologies that can maybe help with this. Anne-Marie, I'd like to bring you back in here. What are the new technologies and practices that you see being utilised to create healthier spaces and make them viable?
Well, I think I love the statement of digital equity. I think that one of the most important things that we're seeing in the industry is really centering around transparency and being accountable. So we're obviously trying to bring a level of confidence into the office space. So I think we will see a greater movement of indoor air quality monitoring and being able to communicate the outcome of those statistics and KPIs. At Well, we have always required when a building gets certified, They will have to provide data around air and water quality, as well as acoustics and lighting quality at the sort of performance verification threshold when a building is about to be certified. But I do see now that, giving stakeholders and occupants and visitors a bit of transparency around what's being measured, and really translating that data back to the folks who are in these buildings to give them that level of confidence that if there are higher levels of CO2 and spaces are more dense, that we're going to have, an opportunity to have that relationship with the BMS so that airflow can be changed, or like Basil said, we can open a window. We really need to have much more connectivity between what the outdoor air quality is, what the indoor air quality is, and having a real visible and transparent way of communicating that to the end users.
Right. And Ronan, do you, in your portfolio of buildings, do you have any examples of some of the things that both Anne-Marie and Michelle have been talking about that you could share with us?
Yeah, so without, it's my 4th week in Hines, so not going to call out specific buildings around the world, but I completely agree with both sentiments. I think we need to be able to offer the occupants far greater level of transparency. Is this environment good for my physical and mental well-being? Is the acoustics, is the lighting, is the quality of water going to be good for me if I'm going to spend so many hours a day there? I also think that what we need to do is to ensure that we work in partnership with the occupants to really understand if the building and the space within the building is being effective and efficient in the way it was designed to be. In other words, are people really using the different spaces that we designed? Pre-COVID, many corporate portfolios were suffering from underutilization. They were only being utilized somewhere between 40 to 50% of the time. So if people are going to commute to that destination, if people are going to spend time there, whether it's 2 days a week or 3 days a week, the partnership between the occupants and the landlords, the operators, is crucial to understand not only that the building is healthy and efficient, but actually that the spaces are used by people. And the final point I would just add to that, which I think is really crucial, and that is, to focus on the experience of the people in the building, and to ensure that the right app is in place so that communication is much more fluid, that there is an association with the brand of the company they work for, with the brand of the building, and that not only we connect the building and its inhabitants, but we also connect the building to its local community. So that ecosystem is really operating in harmony. So there's multiple levels of technology, and we have examples of that, across the European portfolio. It's just a little too early for me to call them out. Ask me in a few months' time.
Thank you, Ronan. And Basil, what about you? Have you got any examples of some of the things that we've been hearing about that you'd like to share? And I wondered if you could also talk a little bit about how building owners can maybe think about this in a portfolio versus an asset-specific approach.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, funny, I think the most current example we have is our own office. So we're actually currently moving office and redoing our own office, and so we've come up with this notion that we want to actually take back the office, and these boundaries that I think Michelle alluded to earlier, and others have touched on. I mean, they really have been shattered, the work-life boundary. And so we want to shatter it backwards, and we want to shatter the office boundary and make the office a lot more like home. And so our office has a proper kitchen, it has a dining room, it has a living room, it even has a little huddle space that's, dare I even say, slightly romantic. And so we think this idea of making the office feel a lot more like home is really a notion that we want to push on. And we're testing a lot of different types of technology, all the air sensors that Anne-Marie mentioned. We're using healthy paint on the walls from Airlight paints, and so we're deploying that. And I think you start to actually, it is important to look at this on a portfolio level, because I think you actually can build scale in ideas. And when things might look expensive if done on a sort of trial or experimental basis, they start to become much more cost effective and much more generally effective when they're rolled out on a portfolio level. paints, for example, we're buying huge volumes of paints, so why not deploy that on a portfolio level? Or the richness of the data we're going to get from our air sensors. Fine if it's in one office or one building, but what if we look at that data and how that data is influenced across the whole portfolio? So I think it's pretty critical. Experiment on a small scale, but then quickly roll these ideas out across the whole portfolio.
Great, thank you. We've had a few questions coming in on the chat, and please do keep those coming in. But just before we move on to those, one final question from me for Anne-Marie. We've had a few references throughout the conversation so far to the broader sense of sustainability, not just health and well-being, and this focus towards achieving net zero carbon. Could you talk a little bit about how those two concepts, health and well-being and the energy efficiency and other sustainability factors of buildings, can work together? And is there any tension between them? Do you sometimes have to sacrifice energy efficiency, for example, to deliver the sufficient airflows that we maybe need? And also maybe you could also pick up on that point around taking that portfolio view versus asset by asset specific strategies.
Well, I definitely think that we have, we stand really shoulder to shoulder with sustainability and believe strongly in a dual approach, certification on a planet-wide, for the planet and for people. So we have worked really hard with groups like the US Green Building Council, the BRE, and other global stakeholders that regard in delivering sustainability certifications. But I think we have seen that maybe what we've been doing in previous 15, 17 years about trying to drive energy efficiency, in some ways we have to probably look at the compromise that might do on the health system or the human respiratory system. So I do think that there is a balance to be struck there. And I think we're working really hard with quite a few of those programs to make sure that there's an alignment and a crossover between those two programs, so that there isn't a real cost impact or a shortchanging of ideas between both. But going back to what Basil was saying, I do think we have to start looking at a portfolio approach. I think it enables organizations to really implement at scale. And I think when we're talking about health and wellness, it's really very challenging to provide certain buildings with WELL certification and not look at all the buildings in that portfolio for constantly evolving towards a better outcome. So we did institute a portfolio program in 2018, and we really feel that it definitely sends the right message to the end users, because it also allows cost and process efficiencies. We can streamline implementation, documentation, even things like performance verification. And what we're seeing now in the sort of next wave of reporting and mechanisms to be more transparent is we're moving from just sustainability reporting with tools like GRESB into portfolio-wide reporting on health and well-being. So I think we will start to see an evolution of annual benchmarking, both internally and externally, which recognizes incremental improvements over time and really allowing the facilities management and operation teams to really plan for the years ahead by looking, even through the lens of WELL, at how their buildings are performing in relationship to air quality, water quality, nourishment, movement, and be able to sort of figure out where they're weak and where they're strong, and then allow sort of FM budgets and operation planning to actually focus on how do you bring all those buildings up to the same level so that everyone can have the access to healthy interior spaces.
Great, thanks, Anne-Marie. Well, I'm going to move now to some of the questions that we've had in from the participants. So the first one, which I'm going to come to you first, Michelle. Do the panel think that health and well-being is the same as happiness? And is simply being healthy enough in the workplace?
That's a very good question. I think that they kind of, this is probably more of a personal opinion, but I think sometimes they obviously do go hand in hand. We all know that if we have an injury or if we've got, mental health issues, all these things, they kind of feed each other. So if you have a sore back, that feeds you, obviously, your mental well-being. It makes you depressed. Then you turn to a chocolate bar or a coffee or something, or kind of comfort food. And then it's kind of like this vicious circle. I think where the office can come in is, I think the office is important in the sense it should be there to help educate as well. I've studied nutrition and I've studied to be a well-being coach as well. So I have a personal interest in this as well as design. And I think one thing that the office lacks is education on nutrition. And I'm sure Anne-Marie will comment on this, will contribute to this as well, is that what people think is healthy for them, I think is not healthy for them. And a lot of people are just uneducated when it comes to their decisions on their mental well-being and their health. And I think that employers have got a really big job to do to kind of help support their staff, I think, in this transition back to work. I think, and maintaining happiness. I think there's a thing called the Blue Zones, which is an interesting book for anyone to read, which talks about the five kind of towns, if you like, where there's the happiest people that live the longest. And a lot of the reasons why they live the longest is, number one, is because they're part of a community and they feel like they're a part of something bigger. And then other elements after that is really goes down to diet and nutrition. And it's the same as like happy chickens lay happy eggs or whatever it is. So I think we can reinforce that notion within the office. So I think, again, this is a great opportunity to kind of reinvigorate the workplace and to make it happy and healthy. Does that answer the question?
I think that's a great answer. Thanks, Michelle. Do any of the other panelists want to comment on that?
Abigail, I think that what Michelle just described is spot on. If people are given the opportunity to be healthy, both physically and mentally, where they spend many hours of the day, inevitably their happiness level will be higher. And if they're happy, then they feel they're part of a community, then they'll be more productive. And if they're more productive, businesses' outcome are more positive. I think the equation and the connection is very, very tangible. And I think it is very exciting to be in the world of workplace and real estate, because I think finally at all levels within organizations, at boards of organizations, people have understood the genie is out of the bottle. It's no longer a taboo to talk about mental illnesses and physical problems and the world of work. I think we're going to enter a new era where it will be a much more holistic conversation and a much more honest dialogue between employer and employee, and hopefully with landlords about what is required.
Great, thank you. Well, another question that has come in is, can we really think about tenants as customers? And does the real estate community understand the customer journey? So Basil, maybe I might come to you first on this one. And then Anne-Marie, I'll probably come to you afterwards. So just so you can be thinking about it in the back of your mind.
Yeah, look, I think the short answer is yes, absolutely. I mean, a customer is just simply someone who pays the bill at the end of the day, isn't it? So you always have to pay attention to who's paying the bill. I think the kind of concept of tenant as a customer is it's become a bit overused. I don't want to over rely on it, but I think we have to worry about whether the people that take our buildings from us are enjoying them or not. And I think at the end of the day, our customers, our tenants, are making decisions based on a shared sense of values and lots of other soft decisions now more than ever, much rather than just kind of facts and figures about a building. And I think there needs to be a recognition of that, and I think there is a growing recognition around that.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree that we have to look at the folks who occupy these buildings as our customers. But if you think about, I think the mathematics is just becoming so much simpler. If you want to retain a really good employee, and we know what the cost of replacing an employee is, if you want to retain a really good employee, you want to keep them happy. If you want to retain a really good tenant, and we know what the cost of void is in a building and having to hire a management team to get that building rented again, those are really heavy duty costs. And if you can create a relationship with your tenant and the occupiers, such that you know that they're happy and that they're thriving in their space. There's a savings all across the board. And just going back to Michelle's question or statement about nourishment, I mean, I don't think we really fully understand how to connect these dots, because there's something as simple as making the healthy choice the easiest choice. So for example, if you design a mindful eating place, a place where someone can get away from their desk and eat in a community, they eat slower, they tend to gain less weight because they're actually in community and they're talking. The mental health impact is super positive. So there's so many knock-on effects from making very small decisions within the workplace design that can have really powerful longer-term effects. So I think it's great that TP Bennett has a nutritionist on the design team. Well done.
Great, thank you. So we're coming towards the end now. So what I'm going to do is ask each of you just to give your final, keep it at no more than 30 seconds, if that's okay, thoughts as a wrap up. Certainly what's come through for me really strongly from this panel is community, and that's come up. I think all of you have mentioned that multiple times. And when you first think about health and well-being in offices, I'm not sure that's the first thing that you would think of. You think about those practical things such as airflow and cleanliness and nourishment. But I think that that emphasis on community is really interesting, and one that I think we've all had to reflect back on more this year. Many of us have maybe thought more about our local communities being at home. We've been separated from our work communities more than we're usually used to, and maybe value that interaction that we have missed a little bit this year. So that focus on community is a really interesting one, and thinking maybe more in the future about how landlords can play more of a role in really developing that community. So I'm going to go to each of you in turn to give your final thoughts. So maybe Ronan, if we start with you.
Yep, sure. So having spent a big chunk of my life in a technology company, I'm a firm believer that the future of work is truly here, and that it is becoming human-centric. Just listen to the exchange that we had in the last 30 minutes. And I do think that occupiers and landlords will make decisions that are really data-driven, and that it will be dedicated to giving people choice, building trust. It will be about safety and health and well-being, as we discussed, but it will also be about quality and experience. And this is a lot, an extensive menu, but I actually think that that's what occupiers will be looking for once we get through COVID. And I think it's a challenge for all of us to respond and engage.
Thanks, Ronan. Michelle?
Yeah, so I mean, in summary, I think the future of office is human. I think it's about reconnection back to ourselves, back to what we believe in and what we miss. I think this time has made us all reevaluate what's important to us. I think it's a great opportunity for buildings to be completely reinvigorated and kind of almost simplify back to what are the bare essentials and what do we need that's going to help nourish us. And I just want to leave with this question: what if we could leave the office healthier than when we arrived? I think this is a big challenge for us as designers and occupiers to make sure we can really kind of start to investigate these types of ideas.
Thanks, Michelle. Basil?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think we've all touched on this point that that good architecture and good design, I think, used to be about connecting people with place. I think it's about connecting people with people, and I think that will certainly be an enduring lesson coming out of the COVID crisis. I just also add that some may know that we've just recently become a certified B Corp, which puts under which we put people and planet alongside profit. And I think some people have described us as an impact investor. And I think I'd just again leave with the notion that we're all impact investors. It's just a question of whether we're having a good impact or bad impact.
Thank you. And finally, Anne-Marie.
I guess some of the things that I've been thinking about over the last few months that I'd love to see coming back into the built environment is more nature-based solutions. And that means, maybe challenging problems that we have with air quality with more natural solutions, whether it's landscaping or just something that doesn't contribute more problems than what we currently have. So I think nature-based solutions, and even in the office space themselves, like really exploring biophilia and understanding how we can get to a place where we feel more in line with their environment instead of sort of combating it all the time.
Well, thank you very much. I'll now hand back to Toby.
Thank you very much, Abigail, and thank you to all of our panelists for a great final session of the day. To all of our attendees, we don't have to be done just yet. Please do stay as long as you'd like and continue to network and chat, as well as visit our wonderful sponsors in the expo floor section. A couple of reminders as well. We do have recordings of these sessions and they're available to view at a later date. And you'll receive a survey following this event as well. So please fill this out with honest feedback. We always are looking to improve and push the commercial real estate industry, through these panels and the reality of online networking. So do let us know what you think of today. And thank you again to all of our sponsors. If you love this event, please do keep a lookout for all of our remaining upcoming webinars throughout the rest of the year. And thanks again, everybody, and see you soon.